Okay.
We can formally start, right?
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. For the benefit of those who are here and those who, since we're recording this session, those who will eventually see this videotape, my name is Hamza Abdul Malik, and I'm here with, as a guest of Brother Imran in his house with his lovely wife and family here. We thank them for the opportunity to come and sit with them and have this discussion here. Also with my fellow comrades here, Brother Shafiq, Brother Derek, and Brother Tariq. And so we're here today to have an open discussion regarding matters of Islam as it relates to the Quran. Today the topic of discussion is towards understanding the Quranic concept of Salat. Towards understanding the Quranic concept of Salat. That's what we'll be discussing today, and we'll be producing verses from the Quran to try to substantiate what actually is the idea of the Quranic Salah. I'd like to open the discussion by quoting a verse from the Quran, chapter 4, verse 82. Chapter 4, verse 82. Will they not then meditate on the Quran? And if it were from any other than Allah, they would have found therein many discrepancies. And I'm quoting this verse because if a thing is not from Allah, it should have discrepancies in it. If something is professed to be of a source of guidance to get a person to adhere to the dictates of God that will earn him life in this life and life in the next life, salvation as they would call it, then it cannot have any discrepancies in that doctrine. That doctrine cannot have discrepancies. And so now I see that the easiest way to address the issue today, the subject matter, is to find out, is there any discrepancy in the so-called ritual salah? The ritual salah that Muslims throughout the world, Shiites, Sunnis, Qadianis, whatever persuasion, they do it 5 times a day ritualistically as a ritual. Is there any discrepancies in that ritual? And if so, then that cannot be something from God. Quran will not substantiate it. Will they not then meditate upon the Quran? If it was from any other than Allah, they would find therein discrepancies. Now the first thing I would ask that we try to do is, we've heard the idea of people having lockjaw. Lockjaw. That's when certain muscles in the mouth or the jaw or something tend to get infected or whatever it is, and you are not able to open your mouth properly. Lockjaw. So I'm saying that we should not sit here lock-mindedness. We should unlock our minds. And to unlock our minds, I'm asking that we suspend any notion that we have of ritual salah outside of the Quran. Act as if we're hearing this subject for the first time. Act as if we're new here and we're hearing this subject about salah for the first time. Now I'm going to begin by quoting the Quran, chapter 20, verse 50.
Chapter 4, verse 50?
Chapter 20, verse 50.
Verse 50, okay.
Chapter 20, verse 50. There Moses is addressing Pharaoh. And he said, our Lord is he who gives everything its creation, then guides it. Our Lord is he who gives everything its creation, then he guides it. So I'm quoting that verse to show that after God has created all of creation, brought into existence everything that exists, that we see in existence today, or that will come into existence, that the last favor he has promised for that creation is to provide guidance, divine guidance. He guides it. guides it, either through the natural laws of creation or through revelation to mankind. Also in the Quran, chapter 38, verse 29. In the Quran, chapter 38, verse 29. Here it says, "This is a book that we have sent down to thee, abounding in good, that they may ponder over its verses, and that men of understanding may mind." We've sent this book down that you may ponder over its ayats, its signs, its verses, and that men of understanding, people who use their intellect, they might mind, they might be mindful.
I had the same trouble. Is that 30, 29?
38, 29.
30, 29. Okay, there we go. That's one.
Also, in the Quran, chapter 47, verse 24.
And what was this? Chapter 4?
47, 44. "Do they not then reflect upon the Quran, or are there locks on their minds, on their hearts, on their qulub, on their thinking? Do they not then ponder on the Quran, or are their minds locked?" Which one is it? If you don't ponder on the Quran, is it because your mind is locked? And if you unlock your mind, then you should be able to ponder upon the Quran. And as a result of that, men of understanding might mind. So again, I said, suspend your knowledge of any concept of Salah as a ritual form of prayer or praying acquired outside of the Quranic ayats. You are about to hear. Suspend your mind about anything that you have heard, and act as if you're about to hear this subject being discussed for the very first time. For example, so let's assume that you're hearing this for the very first time, and you read chapter 24, verse 41. If you suspend your notion of a ritual prayer and depend on the Quranic verses as if you're hearing them for the very first time, and you read chapter 24, verse 41. 24:41 says, "Seest thou not that Allah is He, whom do glorify all those in the heavens and the earth, and the birds with wings outspread. Each one knows its salah and its glorification, and Allah knows of what they do." Each one knows they quote in English, knows their prayer. The birds with their wings outspread. Each one knows their prayer, their glorification and their prayer, and Allah knows what they do. So now if you heard that for the very first time, you would say, well, wow, birds with their wings outspread, that seemed like birds in flight, flying, not just walking around picking up grain of corn or something on the ground, or standing in rows, you see, so that they bob their heads up and down or something like that. These are birds with their wings outspread in flight, and they know their prayer. So what would you imagine that to be? Certainly not this ritual that you do out there. You would never get that idea from that. But now when you hear, when you come to the Quran with that preconceived notion of that, now you're trying to figure out, wow, how the birds making salah? The birds make salah, you see? So maybe when they're lining up and they're bobbing their heads up and down or something like that, that's their salah. Did they make wudu? Did they face the Qibla? Did they do anything wrong that they have to pray for forgiveness and all that so they can go to paradise? You have to include all that baggage with that now. If the birds are praying, you see, if there's prayer. So you don't get that concept like that. So now let's proceed on and see if we can keep that flow, or do we get the concept of any ritual prayer as we proceed further. First thing we'd have to do now is determine what is the Quranic word if we're saying prayer, what is the Quranic word that's used for praying? Prayer. What is the Quranic word? Let's see what word is in the Quran that describes prayer. So we have several places we can go and look and see if this is actually the Quranic word for prayer, because we're using the word Salat. So let's see. First place we're going to look is in the Quran, chapter 3, verse 60. In the Quran, chapter 3, verse 60. There it says, whoever disputes with thee in this matter, after the knowledge that has come to thee, say, come, let us call our sons and your sons, and our women and your women, and our people and your people, and let us earnestly pray and invoke the curse of Allah on the liars. Let us earnestly pray and invoke the curse of Allah on the liars. So that word there is the verb bahala. 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 And that's going to be found in your dictionary of the Quran, page 67a. Page 67a. And there the definition of that verb begins by saying to curse anyone. To curse someone. So we don't see any Muslims using that word. Bahala, for prayer. I'm going to make bahala. You see?
That's 37A, right?
No, 67A.
We're not seeing that. So they said, well, brother, you know, that was a special kind of prayer to use to invoke curse on people. You know, you get your clan and our clan, and that was a special kind of prayer. That's not the prayer we're talking about. We're talking about salah. So, okay, so that word prayer, we're not going to use that. We say, well, does Allah do that? No, it's not attributed to Allah. Allah doesn't call a clan or some clan, they get together and pray, the angels and all of that. So, we're not going to use that word. But that's a word that's translated as prayer. Alright, so let's look at another word. In the Quran, chapter 2, verse 186. In the Quran, chapter 2, verse 186. What is the Quranic word used for prayer or praying? 2:186 says, and when my servants ask thee concerning me, surely I am nigh, near to them. I answer the prayer of the supplicant when he calls on me. So they should hear my call and believe in me, that they may walk aright. When my servants ask concerning me, I am always near, nigh. I answer the call, dua. The word there in Arabic is da'a, dua. And that's in your Quranic dictionary if you want to look up the English meaning of the word. Page 178D. 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 And that's being translated as to call up, to ask for, to summons, to call out, invoke, pray, ascribe, invite. Dua. So now, the Muslims are not using that term for their ritual called salah, dua. They're using the word salah. Although they use this word for prayer. They say, brother, make dua for me, pray for me, dua for me. So, we're saying, well, is this a Quranic concept for praying to God? Does God do that also? So let's take a look at 1444 first of all, because the verse said that when my servants ask concerning me, I'm near to them. I hear their dua. They should also hear my dua. That's what God is saying. They should hear my dua. So God is doing dua also.
Well, what ayah is that now?
We just said 2:186.
Oh, you thought you
right?
this is 1444 then?
No, that's what I'm talking about now is 2:186.
Thank you.
Yeah, 1444. When it comes out, try to note it down so we don't have to repeat that over and over like that, right?
No, I'm saying, you said it
1444. Just write it down when you hear it.
What did you say a minute ago?
Before I said 2:186. You heard that one, right?
Yeah.
But we have it on the tape, so we don't have to keep going back and forth like that. But meanwhile, just write it down. If you're paying attention, the room is very small. There's not a lot of noise and all that. And so just write it down. We want to be sharp here. We don't know, otherwise we're not going to get this.
No doubt.
If we're not thinking and sharp, we're going to miss this. So we're sitting here to be thinking and sharp. Write it down. Boom. You don't have to do no big talking and just write it down. 14, write it down. Then we check if it's not right. So no, you got the wrong verse. Right? So we're asking, does God do dua as well? Because if he's doing dua, this can't be praying, because if we're praying to God, then God must be praying to us also. So let's see what the dua is that relates to God. 1444. What does it say? And warn people of a day when the chastisement will come to them. Then the wrongdoers will say, respond us to a near term, we will respond to your dua. We'll respond to your dua. We're going to respond to your dua. And what? And follow the messenger. The messengers. We're going to respond to your dua. And what is your dua apparently telling us? That we should respond to the messengers. You see? The messengers. The messengers. That's how we're going to answer your dua. Your dua is asking us now to respond to the messengers who brought the messages. You see? Now, how do we know that? Let's take a look at chapter 28. 40, is it 49? 47. 28:47. 28, because they said, well, brother, if it's respond to Allah and his messengers, that means you have to respond to Allah and the messenger shows you how to do the Salah ritual. We said, no, the messengers is only the people who bring the messages, and that's what we're interested in. So if we do a review of the Quran in the matter, we'll look at this verse, chapter 28, verse 47, and it says, listen at this. It says, unless, if a disaster should befall them for what their hands have sent forth before, they should say, our Lord, why didst thou not send us a messenger so that we might have followed the messages and been of the believers? Look at that. Send us a messenger, not so we can follow the messengers, but so we can follow the messages. See, we're not interested in the messenger other than just to have the messages. You see? Send us a messenger, why? So we can follow the messages. You see? Like in chapter 3, verse 143. Chapter 3, verse 143, where Allah says, Muhammad is but a messenger. That's all he is. He said, well, brother, you said Muhammad is but only a messenger like the mailman. Well, that's what Allah said. Allah says Muhammad is but a messenger. That's all he is. He's not except a messenger. He's only a messenger. Messengers before him have passed away. if he dies or slain, will you turn back on your heels? You have the message. You don't need him if he dies or slain. You can say, oh, he's dead, we can't do nothing now. No, you have the messages. You don't need him. Once you have the messages, you don't need the messenger. A messenger is only a messenger when he has a message. When he doesn't have any message, he's not a messenger. He's a regular person. So, chapter 2, verse 186. Allah hears the dua, and he asks you to hear his dua. Chapter 14, verse 44. His dua is responding to the messengers. The messengers are the one who bring the messages, you see? And then finally, we can see that in chapter 21, verse 45. 21, verse 45. Verse 45 says, say, tell them, I warn you only by revelation, by wahi, by revelation. And the deaf hear not the call, the dua, when they are warned. You see? They don't hear the call, the dua. That's Allah's dua. So dua can't be praying because Allah does it. And we're not going to say Allah prays. So that's not the word. Dua means inviting, invitation, calling somebody, look, I'm having a party tonight, would you want to come? You're invited. That's not praying. I'm not praying to you. When I send you an invitation, it's not a prayer.
Dua is used for call on 45.
For call, yeah.
Okay.
For call. Invite. In chapter 16, verse 125, it says, Udu'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmah. Call to the way of the Lord with wisdom and good exaltation. Invite.
1645?
125. So now I see one other word that we're left with. And that's the word salam. 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 And that's going to be in your Quranic dictionary, page 320C. 320C. And the verb salah basically means to turn towards something. To turn towards something. Now we'll get into that definition a little further later on in the discussion. Because we want to find out, does Allah do this salah as well? Salah as well. If Allah does salah as well, then that's not a ritual prayer as well. So now, we will agree that salah, the Quranic concept of salah, is a command from God. Command. For instance, if we look in the Quran, chapter 6, verses 163 to 164. Salah has been commanded from God.
6:6.
Chapter 6, verse 163 to 164. In the Quran, chapter 6, verse 163 to 164, there it says, say, my prayer, my salat. You see, cool, inna salati. My prayer, my salat, and my sacrifice, and my life and my death are surely for Allah, the Lord of the worlds. No associate has he. And this I am commanded, and I am the first of those who submit. So these things that he just said, my salah and my prayer, my sacrifice, my life and my death are only for Allah, lillahi, for the purpose of Allah. He has no associate. This I am commanded. I'm commanded. I'm commanded. And I submit myself to the Lord of the worlds. Now, since he's commanded that in chapter 20, verse 132, we'll find him, the prophet, commanding his family, his household.
Sorry, brother, 20 what?
Chapter 20, verse 132. Chapter 20, verse 132. He's going to command his family. He says there, and enjoin prayer on your people. Well, amuru ahlaka.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Enjoin prayer on your ahl. Ahl means your personal family, not your community, not your kaum, your race, not the Nash, the people in general, not in saying a whole of mankind. This is your family, your household members. Command Salah on your people and steadily adhere to it. You see? We ask of you no sustenance. We provide for thee, for you. And the good end, what is the end result of commanding the Salah on your people, is for the purpose of taqwa. To guard against evil. To have taqwa. This is what Salah should be a result of. The result of commanding Salah on your people is for observance of your duty. So now, since we said from the outset in chapter 4, verse 82, that if the message is not from God, any dictates, any doctrine is not from God, then you'll find flaws in that doctrine. So right away, I see the most simplest way to address the issue here is to see if we find flaws in it. You see, we used to have a method of teaching during our comparative religion days, the gas balloon theory of inspiration. Gas balloon theory of inspiration. It's like if you have a balloon and you put one hole in it, the whole balloon is gone. One hole in the balloon is gone. So all we have to do is have one flaw in the concept of ritual prayer that is not sustained by the Quran, cannot be ordered from God, cannot be, and we find that theory, the whole ritual is gone now. The whole ritual is gone. Even if it has some good parts, one negative part makes it not from God. God doesn't have truth mixed with falsehood. You see? His concepts, his method is all perfection. You see? So, reasons why Salah, ritual Salah, cannot be a command from God. Number one, when you begin that ritual, you say Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Akbar. Akbar is an Arabic word from the verb kabara. Kabara. Kabara means to be big, large, old, ancient. Kabara. From that verb kabara, and I'm not a grammarian, I don't know grammar like that, but I do know this basic rule, so that's sufficient for me. Anybody who wants to go further in this can go further. It's just that we have the foundation of the word right here. It's just like a ladder. Well, I have put the first step. So if you want to put higher steps so that you can go higher, it's up to you. One step is enough for me to reach the thing. If you want to touch the ceiling and all that, you can put more steps. We don't need them. We just have the basic step, you see? So, kabara. From that you get the adjective kabir. Kabir. Meaning great, large, big, or ancient. Kabir. Now, if you want to take that adjective and make it comparable, or put it in the comparative form of grammar, comparative, you can do it in two ways. In English, it would be taking the word big and add ER, meaning bigger, or EST, meaning big S, you see? So in Arabic, it goes the same way. So if you want to take kabir and make it bigger, you say akbar. Akbar. That's the comparative form of big. That means bigger. So when you say Allahu Akbar, you're comparing him with something that's not as big, and you're saying he's bigger. When Allah is not comparable with anything. Allah says, Laysa kamithlihi shay. Don't make any comparison with him. There's nothing comparable to him. So you've already compared him to something. You've called him Akbar. But you've done a grave injustice in many, many ways. First of all, you're making a mistake by comparing him, and then you didn't even give him the greatest of comparative forms. You didn't make him the big S, you just made him bigger. To make big S, you have to say Al-Akbar. Al-Akbar. Like when Allah talks about the greatest punishment on the day of judgment will be the fire. That he uses the term Al-Akbar. Now I can show you all these things right here. I can show you them if you need to see them. I did a whole report on the word Akbar. You see, I can take you from A to Z, but that's a whole nother discussion in and of itself. But nobody who knows grammar is going to be able to argue with this, especially when I give you the next point that I'm going to give you here, where Allah doesn't use any of those terms for himself. He uses the term Al-Kabir, and that's going to be found in the Quran, many places, but chapter 40, verse 12. Chapter 40, verse 12. Chapter 40, verse 12. Allah calls himself Al-Kabir. He's the great, the big, the. There's no comparison in that term. It's not comparable with anything. He's the definite article. That's an attribute of perfection. He never refers to himself as Akbar. Period. You see, in chapter 40, verse 12. Chapter 40, verse 12 says, that is because when Allah alone, Allah wahdahu, Allah by himself, when Allah by himself, without saying Allah and, whenever you say Allah and, people like that. Allah and. But when you say Allah without saying and, people are not happy. So whenever Allah alone was called upon, you disbelieve. You didn't like that. Just Allah by himself. You don't like that. But when others are associated with him, you believe. Doesn't matter who others are. Could be the prophet, Allah and the prophet. Allah and the angels. Allah and the scholars. Allah and. Just Allah and. Whenever you put Allah and, you like that. But when Allah wahdahu, when he's by himself, you don't like that. You see, you're not happy with that. So judgment belongs to Allah, the High Al-Kabir. Al-Kabir. That's who he is. Al-Kabir. So where'd you get this Akbar from? Well, perhaps you got it from the same place they got it over here in chapter 12, verse 40. Chapter 12, verse 40. I know that's where I had gotten it from for the last 30-some years. This source over here. Chapter 12, verse 40. It says there, you serve not besides him, but names which you have named, you and your fathers. Allah has sent down no authority for them. No sultan. Allah has given you no authority for these names. These are names that you named. You and your ancestors named them. Akbar. Allah sent no authority for Akbar. He has commanded that you serve none but him. Wahdahu. This is the right deen, but most people don't know that. Most people are ignorant of that. Not the majority of the Arabs and the Pakistanis and the Persians and the whoever. Egyptians and all that. They say, Allahu Akbar. You see? That's a name Allah has not sent no authority for that. And then in chapter 7, verse 180, chapter 7, verse 180, we're given some other instructions there. Chapter 7, verse 180, towards understanding the Quranic concept of Salat. There it says, Allah's are the best names. Asma'ul Husna. Asma'ul Husna. The best names. So call on Him thereby. With them. Call on Him with them. And leave alone those who violate the sanctity of His names. They will be recompensed for what they do. Leave alone the people who violate the sanctity of His name. By calling Allah Akbar, you are attributing to Him the idea of anthropomorphism. Anthropomorphism. Traits that are endeared to humanity. Bigger. Bigger. Bigger, smaller. You see? Anthropomorphic concept. That God can get bigger. He can become the biggest. You see? So leave alone those people who violate the sanctity of His name. Leave them alone. Don't get caught up in that mess with that. So Akbar is not an attribute of God. So therefore, when you begin your salah by saying Allahu Akbar, not found in the Quran, not sanctioned by God, that's a hole in your ritual prayer. That's a hole in your ritual prayer. We cannot do that. Or anything else that you invoke Allahu Akbar. When you want to slaughter an animal, you say, Bismillah Allahu Akbar. Allah has not told you Akbar, so you've made that meat haram. Instead of making it halal, dhabiha, whatever you like to call it, you have made it haram. Unlawful. When you invoke a name other than Allah.
And he chose Al-Kabir for himself.
He says he's Al-Kabir. I showed you one place. One place is enough. I can show you many places, but one place is enough. He never calls himself Akbar. Not no places. So, we have to leave that alone. Akbar. Allahu Akbar. He's not sanctioned that. Now, anybody want to differ? We can stop right now and see if there's anybody want to differ with that and make an excuse. Anybody want to play the devil's advocate? I'm going to call it that because it would be shaitan other than the Quran. So, but maybe you not want to say, well, I want to speak, but I don't want to advocate for the devil. So I'll just say, anybody want to advocate anything other than that? Anybody want to speculate as to why it might be possible to say Allahu Akbar and get away with it? Anybody?
Didn't seem deemed necessary. I actually searched for the word.
No.
I couldn't find Allahu Akbar.
No.
So I looked into it. And
You'll find Allah He Akbar. That's a different program. That's possession. What Allah possesses is greater than you. When Allah talks about His possession, He can compare it with yours. When He talks about His person, there's no comparison. Allahu is His person. Allah He is what He possesses.
So, okay.
So, Akbar will not allow us to do ritual praying, in my view. Now, another proof that ritual praying 5 times a day, Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, and so forth, is not Quranic, un-Quranic, not sanctioned by law, is because in that ritual prayer you're reciting the Quran to God. You're reciting the Quran to God. You're saying, Kul hu Allahu ahad, Allahu samad. You see? You're reciting to God. When God has not sanctioned any place in the Quran, to my knowledge, for you to recite the Quran to Him. For example, here's what He says. In the Quran, chapter 17, verse 106. In the Quran, chapter 17, verse 106. He tells us via the messenger prophet to whom the Quran should be recited, because the Quran, after all, is a book of guidance, and so whoever hears it should receive guidance, and certainly God does not need guidance, so He doesn't need to hear the Quran. in the Quran, chapter 17, verse 106. And it is a Quran we have made distinct. So, for the purpose of, thou may recite it to the people, and Nash, to the people, by slow degrees, and we revealed it in portions. We've set this Quran that you recite it to the people, because it's a book of guidance, and the people need guidance. They requested guidance. They said, Ihdina Siratal Mustaqim, guidance. So the book has come to guide them. So God has no place in the Quran said to recite it to him. Here's a place that said recite it to the people. God has not said to recite it to him. No place in the Quran. Now, let's look at chapter 84, verse 21. The discussion is towards understanding the Quranic concept of Salah. So now, recite it to the people. In the Quran, chapter 84, verse 21, it says, and when the Quran is recited to them, they adore him not. When the Quran is recited to them, they adore him not. They don't submit. You see? They don't submit. That gives us the understanding that when the Quran is recited, the listener who hears it should submit. So if you're reciting it to God, then are you saying that God should hear it and submit also? It doesn't say that anyone who hears the Quran has the option, well, I'm not going to submit to that. When you hear it, you should submit. But Allah says they don't submit. These people don't submit. You see? They don't. But here's a different brand of people over here. In 17:107. 17:107. And we can look at verse 106 first of all. Let's look at verse 106. And it is the Quran we have made distinct, what we just said, so that thou might recite it to the people by slow degrees, and we have revealed it in portion. Now verse 107 says, say, believe in it or believe not. You have that option when it's recited to you. You can believe or you don't have to. Surely those who are given knowledge before it fall down prostrate on their faces when it was recited to them. Recited to them. You're not suggesting that God also falls down prostrate on his face when it's recited to him, are you? Whatever that means, whether it be literally or figuratively, God doesn't do it. So you're reciting it to him. So you said, well, brother, in congregation Salah, we're just facing Allah on the east of whatever the Qibla, and we're reciting it for the benefit of the people. I said, well, what about when you make your individual Salah by yourself? Who are you reciting it to then? What about in your Dua and Asa, when nobody can hear you? Who are you reciting it to then? So that doesn't work. And now, since you're reciting it to God, and he told you not to recite it to him, to recite it to the people, look what you're saying to God when you recite it to him. For instance, in chapter 108, verses 1 to 3. Look at what you're saying and see if that's appropriate to say to God when you're standing by yourself making this prayer. This ritual prayer. Is this appropriate words for you to say directly to God? Because this language is in the second person masculine singular when you're speaking here. It's you speaking to someone, if that's what you're doing. In chapter 108, surely we have given you abundance of good. So pray to your Lord and sacrifice. Surely your enemy is cut off from good. This is what you're standing there saying to God. Inna atainaka kal-kawthar. Fasalli li rabbika wanhar. Inna shani'aka huwal abtar. That's what you said to God. In Taina Ka Kaltha. Surely we, the people standing here, myself or individuals here, have given you Ka, second person masculine singular, abundance of good. That's what you're telling God. So that God should pray to his Lord, whoever that is, bigger God than him. Since he's Akbar, he has to pray to the bigger God, El Akbar. So pray to your Lord, El Akbar, and make sacrifice, and your enemies, these other demigods and idols and all that, will be cut off from good. This is what you're saying to God? To use your phrase, oh, the Billahi min Dalik. No, you wouldn't be saying that to God. So the Quran cannot be recited to God. To God. Allah has told you to recite it to the people, you're reciting it back to him. So that makes that ritual prayer that you're doing invalid, un-Quranic. Another point. Because maybe this is just my view, so we'll try another one. Maybe one of these is going to stick. I'm saying the two already stuck. But in case it didn't, we'll try another one. Say, you know, you came awful close. You want to try again? You know, at the little thing at the carnival. So you almost won the big prize. You try again. Here, $2 to shoot again. So we'll try again. The Fatiha, which is request for divine guidance. The Fatiha, Al-Fatiha, a request for divine guidance. That's what you're asking for, divine guidance. Al-Fatiha. Al-Fatiha, a request for divine guidance. So, when we look at the Fatiha, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin, Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in, Ihdina Siratal Mustaqim, Siratal Ladina An'amta Alayhim, Ghayril Maghdubi Alayhim Waladdallin. This prayer, this plea, this request is done by people who are monotheists. They're saying, you alone do we serve, and you alone we beseech for help. This is not atheists, this is not kufr, unbelievers. These are people who are already monotheistic. They're calling on God alone. And they want further guidance. You see, they want to be guided further, you see. They're saying, Iddina Siratal Mustaqim, guide us to the Siratal Mustaqim. So you're saying that the Prophet himself repeated this prayer 5 times a day, over and over and over again. Ihdina Siratal Mustaqim. We're saying he could not have done that, asking for guidance, when we read in the Quran, chapter 6, verse 162. Chapter 6, verse 162. Chapter 6, verse 162. What does it say there? Say, as for me, I don't know about you, but as for me, this is what the prophet is saying. My Lord has what? Guided. Past tense. He's already guided me. He's already guided me. To the what? To the Siratal Mustaqim. A right deen. The faith or the millet of Abraham, the upright one, and he was not of the mushrikeen. He was not of the polytheists. So he's already saying, as for me, my Lord has already guided me. Whenever that point was, he would not be asking for guidance after that. Otherwise, the people's hearing him saying, well, excuse me, prophet, we don't mean to be disrespectful, but why did you just ask God for guidance when a moment ago you told us that he's already guided you? You don't believe it? You don't trust it? I said, excuse me, Brother Imran, how do I get back to the Southern State Parkway? He says, go around down to the corner and make a left, go 1 block and make a right. You see? So I go down to the corner and I look around. He said, make a left, make a right. So let me go back and ask him again. I back up. I said, honk the horn. Says the brother's out there again. Says, excuse me, brother. How did I get? It says, I told you, go right to the corner. You was right at the corner. I watched you. Make a right and make a left, and you'll be right there. I said, okay, thank you. And then I go back down to the corner, and I get there, and I said, I ain't feeling this. I back up again. Says, what now? What's going on with this brother? Why would I keep asking you the same thing when you already told me? Why would the prophet ask for guidance unless he didn't trust what you told him? I said, I don't think that's right. You know, I don't see no highway. I see trees and bushes and all. I said, no, when you go, you'll see the highway. If you went there, you can't see it from here. You gotta make the right, make the left, like I told you. I'm looking, I don't see no highway. So I don't trust what he's saying. Or I'll ask somebody else, excuse me, how do I get, they said, make the right, make the left. See, I don't trust you. So the prophet said, as for me, my Lord has guided me to the Salat al-Mustaqim. I'm not going to stand here and say it being a Salat al-Mustaqim over and over again, you see. They say, what is insanity? What is insanity is to do the same thing over and over again, seeking a different result. That's insanity, you see. I keep jumping up for the light switch, and I'm not hiding, it's about 2 feet away, and I keep doing it rather than go get a stool and stand on it. So that's insanity. What you doing? I'm trying to reach the light switch. So, well, you're too short. You got to get something to stand on. I know, but I keep jumping. He's crazy. You see, you're doing the same thing over and over again, seeking a different result. Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim. Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim. When Allah has guided you, He's guided you. For instance, in the Quran, chapter 5, verses 15 and 16. Look at it. So the prophet has already declared that he guided him, and Allah is declaring that he's guided everybody already. Look. In the Quran, chapter 5, verses 15 and 16. O people of the book, indeed our messenger has come to you, making clear to you much of that which you have concealed of the book, and passing over much. Indeed there has come to you from Allah a light and a clear book. What's going to do with that light and a clear book? Verse 16. Whereby Allah guides such as follows his pleasures into the ways of peace, brings them out of darkness into light, and guides them illa Sirat al-Mustaqim. Look at that. He guides them somewhere. So you already got the guidance. What are you talking about? You keep asking for guidance. You don't trust this? Says, well, you know, brother, it can't be guidance because it don't tell us how to make the salat. So this can't be right. It don't tell us how to do the rituals that we found our fathers doing. This book don't describe none of that. So that can't be right. We trust what we found our fathers doing. This is not meeting the getting grade. So, therefore, we said the prophet would not have did that over and over again. Now, let's look in chapter 3, verse 7. Because if we was to say anything after we recited the Fatiha, if we would say anything regarding guidance, it would be what's said there in chapter 3, verse 7. Our Lord, make not our hearts deviate after thou hast guided us. That's what you'd be saying. Don't let us deviate now after you have guided us. That's what we don't want now. We don't want to get lost. So the brother showed us how to get to the highway. So now we just got to make sure we follow instruction. You know, what did he say? Turn left. Okay, go. He says, go about 3 miles. You'll see the sign on the right. Keep going to. Boom. So don't let us get lost. We've been guided. I said, wow, the instruction was very good. We got here right on point. Don't let us get lost after we had guided us. You see? And by the way, you'll never find in the Quran anywhere where anybody is saying, Ihdina, guide us to God. You see? Saying it to God. The people of David's time asked David to guide them about some matters. So 2 litigants came to David and they were arguing, and they asked David as a judge to guide them in the right manner. No place will you find that anybody's ever asking again in the Quran for guidance since the Quran has been revealed. No place. So therefore the Quran is sufficient for guidance. But now, we say that the Prophet would not have asked for guidance over again because he was guided. We see that everybody else has been guided in chapter 5, verse 15 and 16. We see that the appropriate thing, if you would say anything, would be don't let us deviate after you have guided us. But we'll see that we don't even have to say that. You all right?
Yeah, I'm good.
In chapter 9, verse 115. In chapter 9, verse 115. He's saying you're going to talk about guidance and you can't even get through Salat without going to sleep. I tell you.
It's been a long week.
Yeah. Chapter 9, verse 115. Look what it says there. And it is not, they got in parentheses, attributable to the law. It's not for law, that he should lead a people astray after he has guided them. So you don't have to worry about it. Allah will not lead you astray after he has guided you. You see? So you don't have to say, oh Allah, don't let our hearts deviate after you have guided us. He's not going to do that. If you do it, you do it yourself. It's not for Allah to lead astray after he has guided somebody. And the last thing he has promised for his creation is to guide them. So that therefore we say that reciting the Fatiha over and over again, asking for guidance when we have the guidance is redundant. It's not something that Allah would have asked you to do. He's asking you to follow the guidance now, not ask for it. You don't have to ask for it anymore. If you keep asking for it, you can complain to him on the day of judgment. Well, Allah, we wanted the guidance. So why didn't you send us a messenger so we could have followed the messages? No, you're already taking care of that. So therefore, ritual prayer with the Fatiha as a request for divine guidance after you have gotten it over and over again, every day, is not something sanctioned by the Quran. And that thing about David, if you want to see it, it's going to be in chapter 38, verse 22. That's the only place where a request for guidance is requested, and that's not from God, it's from David. And you certainly ain't asking them people for guidance.
And what was the verse again?
38:22. The only other guidance you'll be getting after that will be in 37:23, where Allah says, guide them to hell.
What ayah is that also?
37:23. That's your next request, your next guidance that's going to come to you. You'll be guided to hell. You see? So, now, that's 3 points. Why this ritual salah cannot be sanctioned by the Quran, something from God. Anybody disagreeing up to this point? Anybody have something to say? Well, brother, I don't think that's right. According to whatever you want according to. You want to overthrow what I'm saying. And for anybody who's watching this videotape later on who goes over these verses, we would wish that they would get in contact with us, seek us out, and correct us, because we'd like to be corrected. If not, then you need to ponder over these verses, unlock your mind, and realize that perhaps you might be dalleen, you might be astray. Now, another point why this ritual that you're doing is not valid and sanctioned by the Quran is because you're doing a salah, two of them called Dhuhr and Asr. Dhuhr and Asr, Salatul Dhuhr and Salatul Asr, which are silently done. They're done silently. You come to the salah and you say, Allahu Akbar, and you just mimic words with your mouth, nobody can hear them. And then the Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, and you stand. You're not hearing anything from the Quran at all. So the Quran means nothing. If you recited it, nobody heard it. So the Quran is useless. The Quran, if it's not heard, is useless. What benefit is a Quran if you can't hear it or read it? Hear it, read it, hear it. You see, when it says Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, Iqra, qara'a means to recite out loud. There's no reciting back to God, no reciting inwardly. There's no reciting back to God, no reciting inwardly. Qara'a, Iqra means to recite out. Out, it's one way. Doesn't come back to God, doesn't do inwardly. Now, let's look in chapter 17, verse 110. So now, this is in the Quran, and the Muslims all over the world will just disregard this verse altogether. Disregard this verse altogether. Look at it. 17:110. Chapter 17, verse 110. Say, tell them, call on Allah, or call on the Beneficent. By whatever name you call on him, his are the best name, the Asma'ul Husna. His names have the definite article. They are the best names. And utter not your prayer, your salah. Don't utter it too loud or be silent in it. Don't be silent, quiet. And seek a way in between that. Seek a way in between that. Be in between loud and quiet. In between there. Don't be loud so the people say, what's all that noise over there? Why they gotta be making all that noise while they're praying? Well, they can't make all that noise like that. Where's God? You can't hear them? See, he's in Hempstead. Don't be too loud and don't be too quiet because, well, what is he saying? What is he saying? We can't hear him. Seek a way in between that, you see? So now when you do your dua and asa, you're totally in violation of this.
No doubt.
You're not too loud and you're too quiet. You can't hear. You can't be heard. So that's totally in violation of this. Violation of this. As a matter of fact, the next verse goes on to tell the messenger what to say even. So you don't just say whatever you want to say. Allah tell them what to say. And say, praise be to Allah who has taken himself not a son, nor any partner in his kingdom, who has no helper because of weakness, and proclaim his greatness, magnifying him. Magnifying him. To magnify Allah makes him, to make him big. Magnify him, make him big. The best way to magnify him is to say Al-Kabir. He's the big. Not partially. Akbar. That's not magnifying him. So, well, I can magnify him bigger. That's bigger. Biggest. So, now take a look at 7:204. Chapter 7, verse 204. This is a standard instruction across the board. Standard instruction across the board. And when the Quran is being recited, whenever it's being recited, whenever the Quran is being recited, listen to it and remain silent, that mercy might be shown unto you. Whenever the Quran is being recited, because that's God's words talking, God is talking now, so excuse me, God is speaking, you're not trying to speak, are you? So, well, God is speaking, and we over here talking about, what did you see the game last night? God is over here talking, God is giving an address, and you over here talking about the basketball game last night. God is talking. You see, when you go to court and the judge starts talking, you keep your mouth closed. You see? If not, you'd be held in contempt of court and sent off to jail or pay a fine or whatever. So you like to stand there, yes, Your Honor, be quiet. You know? When the president comes out to speak to the Chamber of Commerce or wherever, Congress or whoever, Mr. Speaker, the president, until they stand up and then they sit down and be quiet. If somebody says something they disrespect. So now imagine if God is talking. You got time to be, God is speaking. You got time to be saying something? When God is speaking? When the Quran is being recited, it's like God speaking. Mm-hmm. You should listen to it and be quiet. So how are you going to do that with Dua and Asa? How are you going to listen to Dua? How are you going to listen to Asa? Nobody's saying anything. So that can't be sanctioned by God. That's wrong. Because you're reciting the Quran and I can't listen to it. I said, excuse me, brother, what did you just do while I recited the surah of the Quran? So, well, I didn't hear nothing. So if I just start talking while you say Allahu Akbar and I just start talking, yeah, what you going to do in a few minutes? You can't get mad at me because I don't hear the Quran being recited. So I can talk. Say, brother, you're not supposed to be talking. Why? We're making salah. Well, I don't hear nothing. You know, I don't hear nothing. So it's foolishness you're talking about. You see? Listen to it and be quiet. You see? And I'll just throw this one in also. Chapter 4, verse 43. Look at that. Chapter 4, verse 43. That takes us in some other places, but I'll just put it in here for right now. Chapter 4, verse 43. Oh, you believe. Go not near Salah, prayer, when you are intoxicated, till you know what you say. Till you know what you say. You got to know what you're saying or what's being said. You can't know what's being said in Dua and Asa. So it's like you're intoxicated. You can't know what's being said in Dua and Asa. You can't go near the Salah until you know what you said, what's being said, because the instructions are being given to you. You have to know them. You can't stand in Salah and then go to sleep because you don't know what's being said. So, Dua and Asa is invalid. Therefore, your 5-time ritual prayer is not sanctioned by God. At least those two for clear. Yeah. Another reason why the ritual Salah cannot be valid. You see, we're taking this route rather than to establish what we believe Salah is, we can clearly show what it's not. Once we understand what it's not, then everybody can get on the same page now and try to find out what it is. You see? But once we see what it's not, and once you see what it's not, you need to stop doing that immediately. That knowledge you understand. You have to now immediately stop doing that. Even if you stop and say, well, let me check it out, let me err on the side of caution, I'm not going to do it no more because I see these verses now clear. So, well, your ancestors, parents, well, I don't care, I'm going to stop now because the law, this is what the law is supposed to be. I trust this book here, and I'm going to stop. Now, later on, if that was some foolishness, somebody corrected it, so I'll start up again, no problem. And if God asked me, well, why did you stop? I said, I didn't want to be doing nothing that I thought you didn't order, and I seen this here, and I didn't have no information before. I was just doing what my parents told me. But when I heard this, I stopped. But when I got clarification on it after further investigation, I started back again because I got no proof, and I went to the brother who said that in the group and corrected them too, and they're on the right track now. Or I can just say, I don't care what that says. You know, look at all these people what's doing this. Well, we never heard this before. Look at our ancestors, what they've been doing. We're going to do what we found them doing. We don't care what this book says. So, another reason, ritual Salah does not uphold the Quran, chapter 29, verse 45. Ritual Salah does not uphold what's being said in 29:45. In other words, shameful and evil deeds are not impossible to commit. Shameful and evil deeds are not impossible to commit. So, ritual Salah does not uphold the sanctions, the dictates of the Quran, chapter 29, verse 45. Look what it says. It says, recite that which has been revealed to you of the book, and keep up prayer. Akimu Salah. Keep up prayer. Surely prayer, Salah, keeps one away. Nanha prevents, makes it impossible from evil, fahish and munkar, shameful and evil deeds. And the remembrance of Allah is the greatest force. And Allah knows what you do. So the dhikr of Allah, the remembrance of Allah, is even greater than the salah. It's greater than the salah. More important than the salah, that you remember Allah. Because if you don't remember Allah, then you're not going to do the salah. Says, brother, what time? Oh, astaghfirullah. I forgot my salah. Why? Because you didn't remember Allah. Because if you remember Allah, you're going to be remember salah. Whatever that is, that connection. I'm not saying it's that ritual. But remembrance of Allah comes before you do what Allah tells you. You have to remember. So, well, my mother told me when I come home to take the dishes out the sink. If I didn't take them out the sink, so I forgot. So I forgot my mother, what she told me. So, when you're doing that ritual salah, that ritual prayer, you can immediately go and do shameful and evil deeds. Anybody can do that. You say, well, brother, not if you're conscious. I'm saying conscious or not. This has not got something to do with conscious. The Quranic salah, if you do the Quranic salah, anybody who's doing the Quranic salah, it's impossible, I don't care what your attitude is, for you to do a shameful and evil deed. We're saying that Quranic salah is being obedient to the dictates of the Quran, following what God has said. If you follow what God has said, it's impossible for anyone to do shameful and evil deeds. Shameful and evil deeds.
What's the word for great?
For what?
For greatest in that verse. Where's the Arabic word for it?
Let's take a look and see.
It might be Akbar there.
It's not.
I would say Allah Akbar.
Oh, it's Akbar there. Is Akbar there?
Listen now.
It's the
Let's
greatest?
see. Yeah, Allahi Akbar. Allahi Akbar. Allah's remembrance, what he possessed.
Right.
Possessing the remembrance of Allah. Allahi Akbar. You see, possessing the remembrance of Allah. Allah's remembrance. Possessing the remembrance of Allah. Allahi, what he possesses. Remembrance of Allah is greatest. You see, not Allahu Akbar. There's no Allahu Akbar. So, Fahish and Munkar. Now, where do we get this Fahish and Munkar from in the first place? In chapter 24, verse 21. Because Salah makes it impossible to do Fahish and Munkar. Well, who makes it possible for you to do Fahish and Munkar? Who makes it possible to do Fahish and Munkar? In chapter 24, verse 21. Or you believe, follow not the footsteps of the devil, and whoever follows the footsteps of the devil, surely he commands, he commands Fahish and Munkar. He commands with Fahish and Munkar. Indecency and evil. And were it not for Allah's grace on you, and his mercy, not one of you would have been zakat, would have been pure. You see? Pure. You see? Zakat. And Allah purifies whom he pleases, and Allah is here and knowing. You see? Don't follow the footsteps of the devil. He commands, Amara, he commands with Fahish and Munkar, with shameful and evil deeds. He's commanding you to do that. And the Salah makes it impossible for you to do that. So you think it's that ritual that you do 5 times a day? that's combating shaitan? No. Imams, sheikhs, scholars, everybody go out and fornicate, lie, steal, do all kind of stuff all day long. All day long, you see. But if you're doing this Quranic salah, whoever it is, no one can do shameful and evil deeds. No one. And we're going to see further on that salah is a command for humanity, not for just Muslims and believers. So anyone, everybody's told this salah. So therefore, 2945 is not upheld by your ritual salah. Because ritual salah, you do shameful and evil deeds, and the law says nobody can do a shameful and evil deed if they're doing this Quranic salah under no condition. It's only when you're not engaged in this Quranic salah that you can do fahish and munkar. Not that ritual.
So the word fahsha means, what does this word fahsha means?
It means I can tell you, it means to do a shameful or an evil deed. But let's see if I can give you the actual. Word here. Anybody have their reference that they can look it up real quick?
I'm looking for Fahish right now.
Okay.
Might be 418, I think. Let me see the 418. Let me see.
You have your
I think
definition?
it's 418 to 419 under for
In
Husha.
your Quran? In your dictionary?
Yeah, page 418. That's
Take a look and see what it means. What does it mean?
it says to be fahashin, to be excessive, immoderate, unreasonable, guile, indecent, shameful, or infamous.
Okay.
Manifest improper conduct, gross sin, unseemly immoral
Yeah.
conduct, abominable.
Goes across the board.
Yeah,
Anything
board.
that's ungodly that God would not
Fornication
sanction
and
you to
sodomy.
do. Anything that God does not sanction you to do, from major sins to minor things. Fashish munkar. Shameful, that's shameful. And then evil, that's even worse. Evil.
Right, evil.
You see? And what is one fahish that we know? In chapter, 1731? Let's see if it's 1731.
733, let me see, 1741.
Seventeen 32.
Right, here we go.
1732, that's a fahish. It says, go not near to fornication. Fornication. Go not near to fornication, you see. Surely it is obscenity, it is fahisha, you see. And not only that, evil is the way. The way that gets there is evil. It doesn't say don't do it, don't go near it, you see. Don't go near fahish, and the way that gets you there is even evil also.
See.
You see, it says don't go in the Hempstead, dangerous town, and the road that leads into Hempstead, they are gangsters all up and down the road.
Gotcha.
They'll get you before you can get to Hempstead.
Gotcha. The word.
They'll take you up before you can get there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The word fahsha, that in Urdu
Yeah.
means someone who's a loose character.
Well, that's, yeah.
Someone who's actually really more like, let's say, erotic in
Yeah.
that form.
Yeah.
And the word fahsha, I remember because I was reading Surah
Yeah.
Nisa, somewhere it talks about
Yeah.
it could be a girl,
Yeah.
and you probably heard of it bringing for witness.
Yeah.
But that's where I saw somewhere along the line fahsha.
Okay,
That's the
good.
word I use.
So now in Arabic it's even stronger, perhaps.
Yes.
Covers more ground.
Yes.
Includes that and more.
Yeah. Mhm.
So, let's move on. We're almost out of this now. Ritual salah does not issue commands. Doesn't give you any commands, orders. Doesn't give orders. in the Quranic Salah does. Let's look in Quran, chapter 11, beginning at verse 84. The Quranic Salah gives commands. Remember we said in chapter 20, verse 132, command your people with Salah, command them with Salah and steadily adhere to it. The Prophet said, this I am commanded. This law I'm commanded. You see? So Salah is a command from God, and it gives commands to the people. Salah. So 11:84. And here we have a prophet named Shuaib who went to his people, the Midianites. Said, look, and to Midian we sent their brother Shuaib. He said, O my people, serve Allah. You have no God save him. And give not short measure, and wait. I see you in prosperity, and I fear for you the chastisement of an all-encompassing day. And O my people, give full measure and wait justly, and defraud not men of their things, and act not corruptly in the land, making mischief. What remains with the law is better for you if you are believers, and I'm not a warner over you, I'm not a hafiz over you, a keeper over you. So this is what Shuaib came to his people. He's talking to his people. He says, look, he's making a public announcement, address. His people coming in and say something to you. Look, serve no God but Allah. That's the first thing out of the mouth of every messenger. Every messenger, the first thing out of his mouth is, there's no God but God. You see? Now, the next thing is, when you deal socially, economically, ethically with people, be fair, be just, don't cheat, don't overweigh people and all that kind of thing. You have a lot of things going on. Your economics is good. You don't have no reason to cheat and defraud people. And what remains with the law is better for you. If you do what the law tells you, it's better for you in the long run. You see? So look what the people, how they interpreted what Shuaib was saying to them. What did they say? O Shuaib, does your Salah command you that we should not worship what we found our fathers worshiping, and that we should not do with our property what we want? Pretty much what I'm saying. They said, O Shuaib, does your Salah enjoin on you, command you, that we should forsake what our fathers worship? Your Salah is commanding that we should forsake what our fathers worship and worship only God, serve only God. Your Salah is commanding that. And that we should not do what we please with regards to our property. Your Salah is giving those kind of orders. Well, that's not a ritual Salah that you stand around in your room and say, let me go make my door. Let me go make my usher. And I'm standing here and I said, well, I ain't see your Salah commanding me nothing. I'm standing here and said, what do you just do? I'm making my Salah. So what is it? You didn't hear it giving you commands? It commanded you just now not to be saying the Trinity. And not to, when you got your money and all that, to go out, you understand, buying crack and selling crack or doing whatever you're doing. It's good. Your Salah ain't commanding nobody nothing. You're reciting the Quran back to God. So if anything, your Salah is commanding God. You see? You commanded him. You told him, Inna atayna kal kawthar. Fasalli rabbika wanhar. We've given you abundance of good. What's wrong with you? You commanded God. Pray to your Lord and sacrifice. That's what we are commanding you. So that ritual Salah is not commanding nothing. And those people understood Salah to be something that gives commands. Something that gives orders. Something that if you obey it, prevents you from fahish and munkar. That's not the ritual Salah that you do 5 times a day. So that's not Quranic, based on this concept. Yeah, you've heard people say, brother, make dua for me. Make dua for me. You ever heard somebody say, make salah for me? Never in your life if somebody said, brother, make salah for me. Says, what time is it? It's the time for Jumma. Well, go make salah for me, I'm busy. He said, where you going to make salah? Make salah for me. You ever heard anybody in your life say that? Nobody. Never read it, nothing. But look what it says in Quran. Chapter 9, verse 99. Quran chapter 9, verse 99. And of the desert Arabs, of those who believe in Allah and the last day, and consider what they spend, and the salah of the messenger as bringing them nearer to Allah. The salah of the messenger brings them nearer to Allah. His salah brings them nearer to Allah. His salah brought them nearer to Allah. Imagine me making salah and the pimp and the prostitute on the corner. I'm bringing them nearer to Allah. I'm standing out here, and you know, I'm in the location, the red light district, and the pimps and prostitutes over there. And I said, well, look, I ain't got no time. It's time for salah. I got to go over here on the side and make my salah. And I made my salah, and that brought them nearer to Allah. You see? So all they got to do is just stand around the masjid and pimp and prostitute, and they be brought nearer to Allah, because your salah is bringing them nearer to Allah. Now look at verse 103. Take alms out of their property. Thou wouldest cleanse them and purify them thereby, and pray for them. Surely your prayer is a relief to them. Salah for them. Your salah is a relief for them. Look at that. So I can say, excuse me, prophet, look, I don't feel up to salah. Make salah for me. Where you going to masjid? Yeah, make salah for me. Where you going to make salah for me? It's no problem. As long as you make salah for me, I don't have to do it. Salah for me. Your salah for them is so you never say salah for me. So that can't be that ritual prayer. You never said it. You say dua for me. But you never say salah for me. So why not salah for me? That's the salah. That's the ritual prayer. You never say salah for me. So salah is not that ritual prayer, because the prophets can't do salah for somebody else. As a matter of fact, he just said in 162, my salah is lillahi rabbil alameen, for Allah. My salah is for Allah.
What verse is that?
So what is the contradiction here? If his salah is for Allah, it's not for you. He's making salah for you and for Allah, then there's partnership there in this salah. So, when you begin to understand that salah is a commitment, then he's committed for your behalf, you see, to make sure that you get this right understanding of this message, get it clearly and concisely, and he's right there with you to establish whatever you got to be done. He's not with us, so we can't rely on him. The prophet is not with us, you see. We can't go to his house and be quiet and eat dinner and leave peacefully. So those commands for the prophet is not for us. So now, look at the one place that we might find a ritual salah is being condemned. Now, because we've been talking about salah, the Quranic salah cannot be this ritual salah that you do every day. And the one place that we see maybe there is a ritual salah is being condemned. In chapter 8, verse 35. Look at it. Chapter 8, verse 35. What does it say?
And their prayer at the house is nothing but the whistling and clapping of hands, tasting the chastisement because you disbelieve.
Look at that. Their salah at the house is nothing but what? Whistling and clapping hands. It's a ritual, an empty ritual. vain repetitions. They do the same thing over again. Whistling, clapping hands. Whistling and clapping hands. It don't prevent them from fahish and munkar. It don't command. You see, it doesn't give commands. It's not for the purpose of observance of duty. You see, it's just whistling and clapping hands. So that's a ritual, and Allah is frowning upon that ritual. So now, from that we see that the Quranic Salah, or the ritual Salah that is done 5 times a day, if any of the points that I have presented, if one of them stands true, then the whole of that ritual Salah is invalid. It's one hole in the balloon makes it invalid. Allah says if it's not from Him, you will find inconsistency. And we find inconsistency with that ritual Salah as opposed to what is Quranically projected, even though we didn't show the actual Quranic Salah. You see? So, that now, if anybody has any feedback on that, we can take it. And those who view this discourse, they can ponder it for themselves, and if they would like to contact us, we can sit down and discuss it either privately or in public. And if not, they can just drink this in for themselves. You see, because before Allah, you stand by yourself. You're accountable, you see. We're just relating the verses. Now, we said if you just suspend your preconceived notions, you'll see that you're not getting that ritual Salah from the Quran. You're not getting it from the Quran. You see? So now, we're saying, and I'm saying, that one of the definitions of Salah is to turn towards something, to follow something, to commit to something, to connect to something, to have a duty, an assignment, an assigned duty, an assignment, you see? So if I show up for work in the morning, the guy says, okay, here's your assignment for the day. Here's your assignment, you see? So I have to take that and carry it out, you see? Commit to it and carry it out, you see? My assignment. For instance, in the Quran chapter 17 verse 44, the 7 heavens and the earth and those in them declare His glory, His tasbih, His subha. And there is not a single thing but glorifies Him with His praise. But you do not understand their glorification. Surely He is forbearing, forgiving. Allah says there's not, everything in the heavens and the earth does the tasbih to Allah. And there's not nothing that doesn't do tasbih. You see? Now that's a statement of a fact, whether you like it or not. That's what the Quran says. That's a statement of a fact. There's nothing that doesn't do tasbih. You see? Now, look what Allah says in this verse, in chapter 24, verse 41. You see? And one thing about chapter 24 is that at the beginning of it, Allah says, a surah in which He has made fard. Fard. This surah. That, you have to pay careful attention to what's being said in Surah 24 in particular, even though He says the whole Quran is made fard. And within the Fard Quran, there's a Fard Surah. You see? And in this Fard Surah, right here, He says this. He's appealing to your common sense and your intellect. He asks you, seeth thou not? R-I-2. Don't you see? That means you should be able to see this now. Seeth thou not that Allah is He whom do glorify all those who are in the heavens and the earth, and the birds with their wings outspread. Each one knows its salah. Each one knows its salah and its glorification, and Allah is knower of what you do. Of what you do. Don't you see that? Don't you see it? Allah says, don't you see that everything in heaven and earth glorify Allah, and the birds with their wings, each one knows their Salah? Don't you see them? This is why I see them, knowing their Salah. Now I got a special note here. It says, look, according to 2441, according to this verse here, everything is doing tasbih. Everything is doing tasbih. The verse 2441 ends with the words, Allah is aware of what they do, clarifying that tasbih is not something to be said or recited, but something to be done. Everything in the heavens and the earth is striving to carry out the tasks assigned by Allah. Everything knows its salah and tasbih, its function and its role. Everything knows that.
Every, what was the last sentence?
Everything in the heavens and the earth is striving to carry out its tasks assigned by Allah. Everything knows its salat and tasbih, its function and its role. So now, let's look at the purpose of man's creation. What is the purpose of man's creation? What is the purpose of man's creation in the first place? In the Quran, chapter 51, verse 56.
One 56.
51, 56.
Service.
And I have not created the jinn and the men except that they serve for me. Serve me, serve for me. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I have not created the jinn and the men except one purpose, what? To serve for Allah. That's what he created the men and the jinn for. To serve for him. To serve for him. Now, you say, you translate the word to worship him. I've only created the men and the jinn to worship him. So that means that we should just stand around worshiping all the time? If we just stand around worshiping and say, look, brother, how come you don't get a job? Because I'm just worshiping. You see, they say the Pope now, who's getting ready to resign, the Pope, he's going to spend the rest of his days worshiping God in isolation somewhere, worshiping, that kind of thing. Just go and just...
Monkery.
just God all the time until I just wither away. Worshiping. I'm not going to be out here. I'm not going to get a job. I'm not going over here I'm just going to sit with the Pope. He's in there in the twilight. You see, worshiping God. That kind of thing. So he's not doing nothing. You think that's what we're supposed to do? Everybody just stand around worshiping God? Allah says everything. He knows this tasbih and the salat. He knows what you do. So he's created you to serve for him. Service. To serve for him. And you say it already in chapter 1, verse 4. In the Quran, chapter 1, verse 4. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. Abada, ibadah, is service. It's not worship. You're not called Abdullah, meaning worshipper of Allah. You're called servant of Allah. Servant. Thee alone do we serve, and thee alone we ask for help. Not nobody else. We're not asking somebody else. Allah and in chapter 4, verse 36, it says, 4:36.
And serve Allah and associate naught with him.
Right.
And be good to the parents and to the near of kin and to the orphans and the needy and the neighbor of your kin and the alien neighbor and the companion in a journey and the wayfarer and those whom your right hand possess. Surely Allah loves not such as are proud and boastful.
All right. Serve Allah and associate not with Him. Serve Allah and don't associate nothing with Him. When Allah alone is mentioned, you don't like that. But when Allah and, as long as you say Allah and, you're happy. But if I say Allah and you say, brother, you can't just talk about Allah by Himself. We don't want to just hear about Allah. You just talk about Allah all the time. It's Allah and. And somebody else. And. You know, just Hamza. What about the other brothers? Tariq, Shafiq, and all of them. He's asleep. He's over there asleep. You see?
No, I'm not.
Says Tariq is asleep.
I'm not asleep.
He's not asleep now because he's talking, but he was nodding off just
No,
now.
I'm nodding off.
Anyway, Tariq, Hamza, and. You see, they're talking Hamza all the time. All the time I tell you is Hamza. You see? And. You see? And. You like and.
Are you comfortable? Oh, sorry.
I'm good.
Sure.
Yeah, you want to go lay down. You want to go sleepy, Brian? Sleepy pool?
That's why he's asleep. He's too comfortable.
You want to sleepy pool? Take a nap?
You're on the tape, man. Unbelievable.
Oh, you're sleeping on the table.
No.
It's not me, Joe.
Unbelievable, man. Tell you.
Quran 13:36. Quran 13:36. Look at that. Quran 13:36. Say, I am commanded only to serve Allah and not associate with Him. To Him I invite, and to Him is my return. That's in the verse. You see that? Quran 13:36.
Yes.
In that verse, there's quoted there, say, tell them, I am commanded only, what? To serve Allah and not to associate anything with Him. To Him do I invite, and to Him is my return. I'm inviting you to Him. What is inviting to Him? To His book, what He says right here. That's what I'm inviting you to do, what's been commanded in this book. You see? So we see that the purpose of man's creation is to serve Allah. So now, let's look at this Salah from the Quranic perspective in three specific places. You see? Where's the first mention in the Quran that we mentioned here about Salah? And that's important because Allah says in the Quran, chapter 75, verse 17. What did He say here? 75:17.
75:17. It should be on us. That's the explanation. Is that it?
It is for us to collect it and to recite it.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Allah tells you to tell a messenger, after having told him, don't make haste with this Quran, don't move your mouth to make haste with it. You see? He tells them, we are the collector of it. We collect it and we recite it. You see? We make it plain. We make it clear, and your job is to follow it. You see? And following it, you're commanded to recite it. That's following it as well also. You follow, recite it, you see? Recite it back, repeat it, you see? But the first reciter of the Quran is Allah. You see? And He collects it, He arranges it. So since He arranged it, we're looking at the first place that we see the arrangement of the Salah is in chapter 2, verse 3. Chapter 2, verse 3. That's our first encounter. If we go by this arrangement that we have here, Fatiha, Baqarah, and right on through, we see the first encounter is in chapter 2, verse 3. Chapter 2, verse 3. And if we just start at verse 2, it says, this book, there's no doubt in it, is a guide to those who what? Who keep their duty. The muttaqeen, you see? The people who keep their duty. And who are they? Who believe in the unseen. You see? The mu'min. The believe in the unseen. And what? And they keep up salah. They keep up prayer, says. They keep up salah. So, they are the Muslimin. So the Muttaqeen, the Mu'mineen, and the Muslimin. Three identities of the same people. They're the people who keep their duty. Why? Because they trust the Quran. Why? Because they observe their duty. They follow closely. Look. So, these people here, this is the first place we see any mention about Salah. We don't see mention about Salah in the order of the Quranic arrangement until we come over here now to 2:43. Again, in chapter 2, verse 43. Chapter 2, verse 43. And there, Allah has been talking to the people of Israel, the children of Israel. We go get some context, we go over to verse 40. Verse 40, chapter 2, verse 40. O children of Israel, call to mind my favor, my ni'mah, you see. And Amta, the people that asked for the ni'mah law. Gyro, Ihdina Sarat al-Mustaqim, Sarat al-Ladina, and Amta alayhim. The people who be favored, who have shown ni'mah. So Allah is identifying the Jews as the people specifically here who have been shown that ni'mah, you see. And Amta. We used to say, well, brother, who is the Gyro Makdubi and the Wall of Daleen? They said the Christians and the Jews. The Jews are the Daleen. Well, Allah said the Jews have been favored. You see? It says, O children of Israel, call to mind my favor, which I bestowed on you, and be faithful to your covenant with me. I shall fulfill my covenant with you, and me alone should you fear. And believe in that which I reveal, verifying that which is with you. Believe in that which I have revealed right now to this messenger that verifies what you got. What you got already. This is verifying what you got. Keep that in mind. And be not the first to deny it. And take not a small price for my messages. And keep your duty to me and me alone. You see? Me and me alone. And mix up not the truth with falsehood, nor hide the truth while you know. And what? And Akimu Salah wa Itai Zakat. And establish the prayer, they quote here, and pay the poor rate. And bow down with those who bow down. So now look, here's the Jews being told to Akimu Salah wa Itai Zakat. I'm saying, is that the same Salah that we're commanded to do? Is that the same Salah? Where they stand and bow and make rakats and boom and dua and asa and all of that? Did they have to come to Mecca and make the Hajj and do that Salah? Did Moses ever have to go to Mecca and make Hajj? Did Jesus ever go to Mecca and make Hajj? Is there any record? Is there any record in history of humanity anywhere where Moses was at Mecca making Hajj? Anybody have any records of that? Any manuscripts, any documents? Any historians? Any record where Jesus took his people and went to Mecca and made the Hajj? Anybody have records of that? The Quran mentioned it. So that they could do the Salah at the house and all that. Their Salah at the house is whistling and clapping their hands. So other than that. Okay, so we see that the Jews, the Bani Israel, put it that way, were commanded to Ikam Salah wa Itai Zakat. So, the next mention after that is in chapter 2, verse 110. And if we look at some context there, we'll start at verse 9. Many of the people of the book wish that they could turn you back as disbelievers after you have believed, out of envy, and themselves from themselves, out of envy from themselves, after truth has become manifest to them. But pardon and forgive, till Allah brings about His command. Surely Allah is possessor of power of all things. Now, and Akimu Salah wa Itai Zakat. You see, whatever good you spend before yourselves, you will find it with Allah. Surely Allah is seeing what you do. Look at that. So they told the same identical words, the Prophet, identical words that was told to the Jews over there in 443. Is that the same Salah? Is that the same Salah? You have to ask yourself this question now because, and I have it here, I have the books. The Muslim scholars are telling us that, the Prophet, he had to go up to heaven to get the Salah. You see? He was taken on the night of the Isra and the Miraj up to heaven to get this ritual Salah that he does 5 times a day. And I have it right there. I have the Bukhari book right here with the hadith in it. If we get a chance, we can read it. Maybe we'll get a chance to read it. I have it right here, Sahih Bukhari, with the hadith in it about that. If you want, I'll read it now. But I can just paraphrase it. So he went up to heaven. He was taken from Medina. From Medina. So that means he's in Medina. That means 13 years, they want to tell us the history, that 13 years he was in Mecca, and there was no command for the Salah, the 5 times Salah. He only got that when he was in Medina. Then in Medina, now he was taken on this Isra and the Miraj. He was taken up to heaven. And there God told him to do 50 Salahs. 50 Salahs. 50 Salahs. Which would have made them just doing Salah all day long. They would have no time to do nothing else. What time is Salah? Okay, I'm finished making wudu and getting ready, call the Iqamah, call the Adhan. Well, okay, get ready to go out the masjid. Said, no, come back. It's time for the next Salah. So we just got to, but you got to do 50. So, okay, we go back. I finished doing that one. So now it's time to go. No. So 50 Salahs every day. You want to tell us that that's what God told him? So we're giving a lecture at Harvard University to the future leaders of mankind, and we're telling them this is what our tradition tells us about the Prophet. He was taken up to heaven, wherever that is, and God told him to do 50 Salahs. He went down. He was coming back to do the 50 Salahs. He was okay with it, and he met Moses somewhere in one of the heavens, and Moses said, "What's going on here?" He says, "I'm Muhammad." I said, "Yeah, we heard about you." I says, "What do you got?" Well, I was just talking to God, and he told me to make the 50 Salahs we had been doing. We heard that y'all was doing it. We heard that y'all was doing it, y'all. He said, but we wasn't doing it for all these years. We were making no Salahs, so we weren't prevented from Fahish and Munkar. We were subject to do Fahish and Munkar because Salah prevents Fahish and Munkar, and we wasn't doing it. So we was open to do Fahish and Munkar all the time, 13 years.
Right.
So Moses said, "Look, man, you got to be kidding. God didn't tell you that." He said, "Yes, he did. Look, right here." He said, "Look, you go back. You go back and tell God that you're not able to do it." Jibril, take him back. So he goes back, and he says, "Who's that?" He says, "Moses is back." So what's up? He says, "God, Muhammad is back." So I was just talking to Moses. I met him on the way, and he told me to come back because we're not going to be able to do that. We're not going to be able to do that. So God says, maybe he's got a point. Maybe Moses has a point. Moses has been around for a while. Maybe he has a point. Okay, do 25. Do 25. Cut it in half. Do 25. So, Muhammad is coming back, and Moses is still happening to be around in the same place. He's still, there. He said, how did it work out for you? So, well, you was right. God cut it in half. In half? What, you mean 25? No, you can't do 25. Go back and tell God, you can't do 25, man. What's wrong with you? Go back and tell him you can't do that. Says, "Excuse me, Jibril, I hate to keep bothering you, but we got to go back." Jibril is like, "I got many things. Look, I can't keep fooling around with you now. What do what?" So he's back again, and God says, "What are you back again? What's going on now?" Says, "Look, I was talking with him." Not Moses says, "Look, 25, okay, cut that in half. Cut that in half. That's 12 and a half now. 12 and a half Salahs. This is right. That was right there in the book. Says, cut that in half. So that's 12 and a half Salah. Do a half Salah also. 12 and a half. Comes back, Moses said, man, you can't do the 12 and a half. Go back. So he comes back again, and God says, look, I'm tired of this foolishness. Now look, do 5. If you can do 5, I'll give you 10 for each one. That'll be like 50 what I said before, so you ain't popped me off. You didn't, I still got my point across. 5 will equal 10. That'll be 50 like I told you, but meanwhile, just do 5. You see? So he comes back, and Moses says, what's going on? He says, 5. Says, go back again. He says, nah, I'm too ashamed. I'm too ashamed. He says, I believe you're right. I can't do 5 either, but I'm too ashamed. I'll just hang out with the 5. I'm too ashamed. Says, I was too ashamed to go back. So that's where you got the 5 ritual salahs from. You see? So I'm saying, well, is that the same one Moses and them had? Because they were told to do the same salah. They were told to do the same. Did Moses have to go through all of that? And how 13 years you wasn't doing that? So you can see that story outside of the Quran. We already showed that all these points we showed is the anti-Quranic, and now the whole story is anti-Quranic. This doesn't sound like some crazy talk. Nobody in their sane mind is going to listen to that. You said that stories, the stories of the ancients, the fairy tale stories. Nobody in their right mind, I'm not going to listen to that now. Back when I wasn't thinking, when I just blindly followed, tuck lid, when I came in, people said you can do this, that's what it is. The hadith and all that, that's what it is. It didn't make sense, but I said, well, it won't matter. All the people that's doing it. But when I started to use my intellect now and ponder for myself and go back and look, I said, nah, that's not right. This is not right. So, we see in these 3 places here that the first body of people is just mankind in general. There's no description. There's people who trust God and want to seek the right way of any denomination and persuasion. And we see that there's no command for any individual salah prescribed in the Quran. The individual salah.
And also that hadith humanizes Allah. It makes him seem like he's indecisive, like he didn't know what was best for
Exactly,
us.
he's indecisive.
Right.
That's anthropomorphic. Again, that's why you call him Akbar. You've got him described like a man that he doesn't know what he's doing. Moses got more sense than God. You see? So that doesn't make sense. Now I have the hadith, maybe we get a chance to read it.
Yeah, I do like to have a reference of that these later, whenever.
You want to read it right now?
No, just a reference. Just whatever.
Well, let's get the reference
Yes, I
right
do.
now. Here's the reference right here.
Just for my record.
Okay.
Bukhari, right?
This is in Sahih Bukhari.
Okay.
Sahih Bukhari, the English collection here, volume 1, page 211. Page 211, hadith number 345. And the chapter heading there is How the Prayer Was Prescribed in the Night of Isra of the Prophet to Jerusalem and then to heaven. Ibn Abbas, Abu Sufwan, when telling the narration of the Hercules, mentioned the Prophet ordered us to offer our prayers regularly and to be true in the chest. And so he goes right on to tell the story now.
That's fine. That's another reference.
And it goes on for pages. Okay?
Thank you.
Now, so the Salah of the children of Israel, we said in the Quran, chapter 2, verse 43. Keep up prayer and pay the poor right and bow down with those who bow down. If we look in chapter 10, verse 87, because that was the children, we revealed to the children of Israel, so that had to come through Moses. So let's talk about Moses in particular now. Because whatever was revealed to the children of Israel was given to Moses, he had conveyed to them. So in about Moses in 1087, chapter 10, verse 87 says, we revealed to Moses and his brother take for your houses, take for your people houses to abide in Egypt, and make your houses places of Qibla. You see? Qibla. They put worship. And Akimus Salah, and keep a prayer, and give good news to the believers. You see? Take your houses as places of your Qibla, whatever Qibla is for them, and Akimus Salah, and keep a prayer, and give good news to the believers. Now, again, in chapter 20, verse 14, we hear Moses being directed. Moses. And there God is telling Moses, surely I am Allah, there is no God but I, so serve me and Akimi Salah for my establish Salah for my remembrance.
Okay.
Now, something you're going to have to look at, and perhaps we might get to it, if not this evening, we'll get to it again. That the terminology, the grammar used here, when Allah says Akimu, Akima, Akimu, Akima is plural. Plural. When Allah says Akimi, singular. My point here is that the only place Allah uses Akimi in terms of the messenger for Salah, He's given him, only him, fixed times to do it. Fixed times for him. Fixed times for him to Akimi Salah. Everybody else is Akimu Salah anytime. There's no fixed time. So just think about it. Because the messenger has to articulate the message. You see? He has to propagate the message. So he has certain times when you come to him to get that message. You see? So for him it's at fixed times when he called you to this message, you see? For the other people, Salah's at any time. We'll establish that if we get a chance to do it. If not this evening, we'll do it in the next session. We'll make that point clear. The Salah is any time, you see? Because if it has to prevent you from Fahish and Munkar, it has to be 24/7, wouldn't it?
Exactly.
Once you stop doing Salah, you're open for Fahish and Munkar. So your Salah, that to prevent you from doing shameful and evil deeds, to make it impossible, you have to be doing it all the time until when you sleep. You have to have your Salah barrier up all the time. That means you have to be adhering to the instructions of the Quran, following the Quran closely at all times in your waking hours. And therefore you don't slip and do Fahish and Munkar. But to disseminate the message, the Prophet has been given fixed times to disseminate that message to you because you have to come to him to get it. He's the only one who has the message at that time. So everybody has to come where he's at. And when it's convenient for him to have you come.
Explain.
Okay, we're on. Okay, one thing I neglected to say earlier when we were talking about the things that would exclude any form of a ritual called Salah as being sanctioned by the Quran. Well, it would also include the idea that the Quran is fully explained, fully detailed, clear, and contains everything necessary for man's salvation, if you want to use the term salvation. For man to achieve his plight in earth and to return to his creator. Everything is explained in the Quran, detailed and made clear and contained. And I'll go through that list in a few minutes regarding that. So that therefore, if you have to go outside of the Quran to find the wherewithal to do this ritual called Salah, then you're negating the fact that the Quran claims to be what it is, and that is sufficient as a guide. And we'll come back to that. Now, to carry on further, because we talked about towards understanding the Quranic concept of Salah, and we talked about negating, we began by negating Salah, what Salah is. Allah says if it's not, the book is not from him, you'll find fault, so we want to negate things before we affirm. We negated that Salah could be any ritual because of the things that we listed. And then we talked about the Salah of the children of Israel, and then the Salah commanded upon the messenger and his community. Were they one and the same? And we conclude that they were the same. Now, another way to understand what is the Quranic concept of Salah, what is the Quranic concept of Salah, is to know who are the Musallin, who are the doers of Salah. Who are the doers of Salah, and then we see what they do, then we'll see what Salah is. You see? If I want to know what is painting, and I find a painter, and see what he does in his daily routine, then I'll know what painting is by what the painter does, you see? So, let's see who are the Musallin, the people who are the doers of the Salah. In the Quran, chapter 70, starting at verses 22 to 35. 22 to 35, chapter 70, starting at verse 22. But now, if we just want to be getting a fuller picture of this, we can start right at the beginning of the surah, at verse 1. Chapter 70, verse 1. Look what it says. A questioner asks about the chastisement to befall the disbelievers. There is none to avert it. From Allah, Lord of the ways of ascent. To him ascend the angels and the spirit in the day of the measure, of which is 50,000 years. So be patient with the goodly, with a goodly patience. Surely they see it far off, and we see it not. The day when the heavens the day when the heavens is as molten brass, and the mountains are as wool, and no friend will ask of a friend. Though they are made to see them, the guilty would fain redeem himself from the chastisement of that day by his children, and his wife, and his brothers, and his kin. They gave him shelter, and all that are in the earth then deliver him. By no means, surely it is a flaming fire, plucking out the extremities. It shall claim him who retreats and turns back. Look at that. It will claim the person who retreats and turns back. Remind me now that we're going to find out that the opposite of the word Salah in the Quran is tawalla, turn back. So if you want to know what Salah is, just look at the opposite of it. You see, it's to turn back. So we said to turn to something, to be committed to follow. Now, verse 18 says, and hoards them with holes. Surely man, al-insan, now this is what we're getting into. Verse 19, surely man, al-insan. Al-insan is the global term, a term Allah uses for all mankind. Not just segments of people, like anas, bodies of people, kaum, a certain race of people, akho, a certain segment of the household, or another segment of people. But here, insan is a generic term meaning all mankind. Surely man is created impatient, fearful when evil afflicts him, and niggardly when good befalls him. That's man in general. Except who? Except this particular man in general. It got nothing to do with Muslims or Christians or Jews. Man. Except this man. Who? Except those who Salah. Except those who pray, the Muslimin. Except the Muslimin. You see? Mankind is niggardly and all its schism goes on with them except the Muslimin. The people of mankind who are the Muslimin. You see? Now, it goes on to describe them. Who are constant in their salah. You see, in their prayer. Constant in their salah. The people, in general, they're constant in their salah. And in whose wealth there is a known right for the beggar and the destitute, and those who accept the truth of the day of judgment, and those who are fearful of the chastisement of their Lord. Surely the chastisement of their Lord is a thing not to be felt secure from. And those who restrain their sexual passions, except in the presence of their mates, or those whom their right hand possess, but such surely are not to be blamed. But he who seeks to go beyond this, these are the transgressors, and those who are faithful to their trust and their covenant, and those who are upright in their testimony, and those who keep a guard on their salah, on their prayers, these are in God's honor. Look at that. That's the salah of all men. Of all men. Mankind. That's the salah of mankind. You see, like Allah says, everything knows its salah. This is the salah of the mankind who know their salah. This is what they do. This is their conduct. You see, it's not a ritual that they do in vain over and over again. Ihdina Siratal Mustaqim. You know, 2 rakats, standing, bowing, facing certain. This is not that. You see? This is the Muslimin. Now, if you look at the Muslimin, you see there's not much difference in them and the Mu'mineen. The Mu'mineen. So now keep that in mind, and now let's look at the attributes of the believers, the people who trust, the trusters. In the Quran, chapter 23, verses 1 through 11. And if you're reading them, you're not going to see much difference. This is now, we just read about mankind in general, the Muslimin. Now we're going to talk about the so-called believers, or the people who trust. And you'll see that they have the same attributes as the Muslimin. You see? The people who commit, who follow, keep their duty. Look what it says in 23, 1 through 11. Successful are the Muslimin, you see? Mu'mineen, the believers, you see? They're successful. Remember the last time we were talking, Brother Imran, you were asking them about success.
Yes.
So Allah tells you who's success here. Successful are those who trust, you see? Who are humble in their salah, you see? In their prayers, humble in their salah. Who shun what is evil, what is vain, you see? Who act for the sake of zakat, purity, you see? Not for money, they're not acting for the sake of money, 2.5%. Who restrain their sexual passions, except in the presence of their mates, or those whom their right hand possess, for such are not to be blamed. But who seek to go beyond that, such are the transgressors, and those who are keepers of their trust and their covenant, and those who keep a guard on their salah. These are the heirs who inherit paradise there, and they will abide. It's pretty much the same as the Muslimin. Pretty much the same. They have the same attributes. So we can see now an idea of what salah is in the Quran. It's keeping of your duty. It's keeping of your commitment. It's keeping your contract between God and you. It's answering, responding to the call of God to observe His ordinances. You see? To prevent yourself from shameful and evil deeds. You see, following the messenger's message. Okay? Now, let's go back again and look at Moses another time. Moses in chapter 19, 51 and 52.
1951.
Because he was told about Salat prior to Muhammad and his followers, Moses. In chapter 19, verses 51 and 52. Because the law had told Moses about the Salat. So if we get a clearer idea about him and the Bani Israel, and that comes over into Islam, and the law says we haven't given you anything we didn't give them. It's the same deen that we provide for you, we provide for them, obedience is deen. We'll see that it's all the same. And there was no ritual 5 times a day, going up to heaven, getting this business and all that. There was a commitment to do what God had prescribed for you to do. In Quran 1951, and mention Moses in the book. Surely he was purified. Mukhlis. He was purified and was a messenger prophet, you see. Mm-hmm. And we called to him from the blessed side of the mountain, and we made him draw nigh in communion. We called him. See, don't forget that Moses, from the time he was a child, was brought up, reared up in the household of Pharaoh. Who was Pharaoh? A pagan, who considered himself God. They ain't had no other religions running around here where Moses could say, well, I want to go here and make Salat with the Muslims. They didn't know nothing about none of that kind of stuff. Pharaoh was a pagan claiming himself to be God. You don't do nothing unless I tell you to do it. I give you permission to do that? No, well, don't be doing nothing. Otherwise, I'll chop your head off. So Moses grew up with that. You see? Then when God allowed Moses to get out of that mess and escape from there, he called to him and chose him, you see? Moses don't know nothing about nothing. He just knew what he learned in Pharaoh's court. So in chapter 20, starting at verse 9, here's Moses don't know nothing about no religion and all that kind of stuff that's going on outside of what Pharaoh and them was talking about. He was a baby reared up in that. You see? So in Quran chapter 20, starting at verse 9, and has the hadith, the story of Moses come to you? The hadith, it says. The narration, the hadith about Moses. Did you hear that hadith? Since you're in the hadith. You hear that hadith about Moses? It'll come to you. When he saw a fire, he said to his people, that means his family, Ahlaka, his family, he said to his family, stay, I see a fire. Happily I may bring you therefrom a live coal, or find what? Huda, at the fire. I'll find guidance at the fire. Maybe I'll find some guidance there. You know, I'm out here in the wilderness. Maybe I'll bring you a live coal and we can start a fire and warm ourselves up out here. Or somebody will tell me where the nearest town is. You see? Maybe I see a fire, there's some people there. Maybe they know where to get me out of this mess I'm into right now. Get me somewhere. When he saw a fire, he said, verse 10, to his people, "Today I see a fire. Happily I may bring you therefrom a live coal or find guidance at the fire." So when he came to it, a voice came, "O Moses, surely I am thy Lord. So take off thy shoes. Surely thou art in the sacred valley Tur. And I have chosen thee, so listen to what is being revealed. I have chosen to you, so listen to what I'm telling you now." You see, this is the first time Moses is hearing something from God. Other than that, he's been under Pharaoh's domination. Pharaoh's been talking pagan foolishness. Moses didn't know anything about nothing else. Nobody dared to be having something else going on around Moses. Not like America where freedom of religion. There was no freedom of religion there. Moses was the God, and you do something else, you lose your head. Did you move? I told you to move? No. Okay, cut his legs off.
No.
You see, you're moving. Somebody told you to move. You moved over here. What you move over there for? You see?
Yep.
So here Moses now, first time he sees a fire out there in the wilderness somewhere, he says, wow, there's campers over there. Maybe I'll get something to start a fire here, or they're going to tell me where the nearest camp is, the nearest town, you see? So when he goes there, God calls to him right there for the first time now. Look. And God says in 13, I have chosen thee, so listen to what I'm revealing to you. Surely I am Allah, there's no God but I. That's the first thing that comes out, your command. The first thing all the time. If you want to know if a religion, a so-called religion, is something from God, see what it dictates about God. If it says God, there's no God but God, all that, you might can start listening to it. You see? But even if you listen to it, it's going to lead you to the next, right into the Quran. You see? But at least you can give it some credit. You see? Surely in God, there's no God but me, so keep up Salah for my remembrance. Look at that. Surely there's no God for me, so Ikama Salah li dhikri. Keep up the Salah for my remembrance. Now what Moses know? What do you mean Salah? What do you mean Salah? You see, God didn't start telling him, well, you got to make 2 rakats and bow and do taslim and dhikr and tasbih and, you know, he didn't start telling them nothing like that. You see, nothing like that. Now, so when you read the history of Moses, you see Moses dwelled among the Midianites. You see, in Midian. And that's the place where Shuaib was that we talked about. And the people of Midian, when Shuaib came dictating what Moses talking about, these dictates I'm going to tell you, when they came, they called that Salat. See? So Moses is going to understand the same thing throughout his presentation, throughout his travels, that this is Salah. God didn't have to detail to him what Salah is. He told him to keep up Salah for my remembrance, and remembrance of God is the greatest force. So basically it's about remember me. If you remember me, you'll do the right thing.
No doubt.
You see, if you remember God, you're going to do the right thing.
No doubt.
It's innate. It's for you innate, you see? So you'll do the right thing. Remembrance is the greatest force. Now, we're going to read in 1954-60. I'm just going to jump here now.
460?
Yeah, 1954 to 60. Where we talk about the loss of Salah. People who lost their Salah, who neglected their Salah, you see? Because if you just think about it, there's only two basic concepts. Guidance and misguidance. Huda and the law, you see? Either you're guided or you're astray. So, if you're doing Salah and it prevents you from Fahish and Munkar, it's got to be because you're following the guidance. And if you're able to do Fahish and Munkar, it's because you're not doing the guidance. So either you turn to the guidance and follow it, or you turn away from it and you don't follow it, and you're just in that quagmire. That's the way you're going to read it in the Quran. You're not going to see this picture that you get out here. You see that you had to go up to heaven and get from Bukhari 200 years later. Not that. Now, in 1954 to 60, look, 54, it mentioned Ishmael in the book. Surely he was truthful in promise, and he was a messenger prophet. And he what? Ya'muru. He commanded from Amara. He commanded on his people, his family, Salat and Zakat, and was one in whom his Lord was well pleased. You see that? Mm-hmm. And mentioned Idris in the book. Surely he was a truthful man and prophet. And we raised him to an elevated state. Then Allah goes on in verse 58 and says, these are they whom Allah has bestowed favor and amma, you see? Ni'mah, you see? Favor. From among the prophets of the seed of Adam, and of those whom we carried with Noah, and of the seed of Abraham and Ishmael, and of those whom we guided and we chose. When the messages of the beneficent were recited to them, they fell down in submission weeping. Verse 59. But after them, and evil came an evil generation who wasted their salah and followed lust. So they will meet with perdition. Look at this now, look. Who are the people that Allah named before? Zechariah and John and Mary and Jesus and Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Moses and Aaron and Ishmael and Idris. You see them in chapter 6, verse 84 to 95. And over here, we have Ishmael and Idris and Moses. All the prophets from, Allah says, the prophets from the seed of Adam, and those whom we carried with Noah, of the seed of Abraham, Israel, and those whom we guided and chose. When the messages of the beneficent was recited to them, they fell down in submission. But after them came a generation who what? Wasted their salah, neglected their salah. And what did they do? They followed lust. So if they followed lust, that means they turned from something else to follow this, and they didn't follow that. You see? They wasted their salah, and so instead of doing something that wouldn't be wasting their salah, they followed lust. You see? So they will meet perdition. Except those who repent, believe, meaning trust, and do good. Such will enter the garden that they will not be wronged in the north. You see? So doesn't that give you an idea that if we guided all of these people from Adam, their seed, their descendants, and Ishmael and all of them, we revealed a message to them and one thing after the other, and they were doing good, and then there came a generation that wasted their salah, turned away and after them. So who was that after them? Who was after Ishmael? The first thing we know after Ishmael, after Jesus rather, is Muhammad. There could be in between them more, but we know about Muhammad after him. So look in the Quran chapter 25, verse 30, and see what happened with them. 25:30. In the Quran 25:30.
Mm-hmm.
What does it say about them?
And the messenger will say, "Oh my Lord, truly my people treated this Quran with neglect."
Look at that. And the messenger will say, "Oh my Lord, surely my people, my kaum, my nationality, the Arabs, did what? Mahjuran. They have made hijrah. The word where you get the word hijrah from this Quran. They fled from this Quran. So if they fled from the Quran, they're not able to do their salah anymore. Because the salah prevents from fahish munkar. And this Quran is the guidance that was given to Muhammad. It's the truth, it's the huda. It's what it is that prevents. If you look in 1690, what does it say in 1690?
Yeah, read it.
1619?
1690.
Okay, thank you.
Allah commands justice, the doing of good, and giving to kith and kin, and he forbids all indecent deeds and evil and rebellion. He instructs you that you may receive admonition.
Right. So God commands with the justice and adl, and he prevents the fahish, you see, and the munkar. God does that. So God prevents you from doing shameful and evil deeds. And the salah prevents you from shameful and evil deeds. That means God and salah does the same thing. So how does God do it? He's not coming and saying, wait, stop doing that. He does it by his commands. And his following his commands is your salah, which does it. And the devil commands it by his commands. You follow me?
Very clear. Very clear.
Now, the people made hijrah from the Quran. So if they turn from the Quran, they turn to something else in their flight, in their hijrah. So let's take a look over here. In chapter 23. Starting at verse 60. 23:60. Look at that. It says, and those who give what they give, while their hearts are full of fear, that to their Lord they must return. Verse 61. These hasten the good things, and are foremost in obtaining them. And we lay not on any soul a burden except to the extent of his ability, and with us is a book which speaks the truth, and they are not wrong. Nay, their hearts are in ignorance about it, and they have besides this other deeds which they do, until when we seize those who led easy lives among them with chastisement, lo, they cry for succor. Cry not for succor this day, surely you will not be helped by us. My messages were indeed recited to you, but you used to turn back on your heels, hastily passing the night talking nonsense. You see? Talking nonsense. That word talking nonsense is from the same word as hijrah. You see? Hijrah. What we used in 25:30, where it says, Mahjurin, you made hijrah from. So now you're talking nonsense about the message. That means you're out away from the message. You're talking away from the message about it. You see? So what is the word? Tahjurun. You see? The other word, you see? Mahjurun. This is tahjurun. The same word hijrah. My people have abandoned the Quran, and over here you're outside the Quran talking nonsense about it. What are you talking about it nonsense? Well, it don't give all the details for Salah.
Dig it.
When it says it's fully detailed. Well, you have to do the kalima shahada, shahada la ilaha, shahada Muhammad Rasulullah, when it says Allah is sufficient as a witness. He didn't ask you to bear witness. And one thing after the other, Allah is sufficient to guide you, saying, well, the Prophet, whatever he gives you, you have to do what he tells you. So Allah says, well, the person guilty of fornication, give them 100 lashes. And said, well, let's see what the hadith said. The hadith said, never mind that, kill him. Kill him. I said, well, I said, excuse me, Yana, Allah says in the Quran that I should be given 100 lashes. He said, never mind that. This prophet, according to Bukhari 200 years ago, recorded that he said, stone you to death, so that's what we're going to do. So that's hearsay. That's a hadith that could be forged. We don't care. It's our beloved prophet, and that's what we're going to do. We beloved him, but you can't mention Allah alone. When Allah alone is mentioned, we're not interested in that. So here, haughtily passing the night away, talking nonsense about it, about the message, you see? Do they not then ponder the word? Or has there come to them that which they did not come to their fathers of old? Or do they not recognize their messenger that they deny him? Or say there's madness in him? No, he has brought them the truth, and most of them hate the truth. Simple as that. Most of them hate the truth, which is the Quran alone. Al-Haq. They said, you follow the Quran alone. These are Quraniyun. So most of them hate the truth. It says in chapter 47, verse 2, surely that which is given to Muhammad, that is the truth from your Lord. You see, Muhammad says, this Quran has been given to me that with it alone I warn you and whomever it reaches. But they hate the truth, you see. So they have wasted their salah. They have neglected their salah, and everybody that follows them. Everybody that follows them, everybody who rejected the Quran, when the Quran came, the world that rejects the Quran has neglected salah now. Has neglected the salah. But there came after them an evil generation who wasted salah and followed lust. So they will meet perdition. Except those who repent, turn around, go back, and trust, and do good. such will enter the paradise, and they will not be wrong. You see? And what will they say when they enter the paradise? Chapter 7, verse 43. Look at it. Chapter 7, verse 43. What will they be saying? What will be the cause of them getting into paradise? Chapter 7, verse 43.
That's who was brought the truth.
Oh, praise due to Allah.
7:43. And we shall remove whatever of ill feeling is in their hearts.
Rivers.
Rivers flow beneath them. And they say, all praise is due to Allah. Alhamdulillah. Look at that. All praise is due to Allah who guided us to this. Who guided us? Not Allah. Not Allah and. Not Allah and. Allah who guided us to this. And we would not have found the way except Allah had guided us. Not by Allah and somebody else. We wouldn't have found the way if Allah hadn't guided us. If Allah and, we would have been misguided. If it was Allah and, we would be misguided. But it's only Allah, so we've guided. We would not have found the way if it had not been just Allah by himself. Certainly, what? The messengers of our Lord brought the truth. That's what they did. They brought the truth. They brought the truth. And so the messengers brought the messages. And we followed the messages, not the messengers.
Yeah.
You see? This is the garden which you were made to inherit for what you did, not what you believed. What you did. These people did not lose the ritual called Salat. They lost the purpose behind the Salat and thus made the covenant with the law null and void. In closing this segment for today, in the Quran, chapter 24, again, verses 46 to 51. 46-51. In the Quran, chapter 46, verse 24, verse 46 to 51. We have indeed revealed clear messages. Clear messages. And Allah guides whom He pleases to the right way. And they say, we believe in Allah and the Messenger, and we obey. Then a party of them turn away after this, and they are not believers. And when they are invited to Allah and His Messenger that He may judge between them, not they, He may judge between them, lo, a party of them turn aside. And if the right is on their side, they hasten to it, him in submission. Is there in their hearts a disease, or are they in doubt? Or fear they that Allah and His Messenger will deal with them unjustly? Nay, they themselves are the wrongdoers. The response of the believers, when they are invited to Allah and His Messenger, that He, not they, may judge between them, is only that they say, we hear and we obey. These are successful. And in the Quran, chapter 27, verses 76 to 81.
Sorry again.
27, verses 76 to 81. Surely this Quran declares to the children of Israel, most of wherein they differ. And surely it is a guidance and a mercy for the believers. Truly thy Lord will judge between them by His judgment. And He is mighty knowing. So rely on Allah. Surely thou art on a plain truth. Certainly thou canst not make the dead to hear the call, nor canst thou make the deaf to hear when they go back retreating. Nor can thou lead the blind out of their error. Thou canst only make none to hear except those who trust, believe in our messages, so they submit. So they submit. Finally, Allah says in 18:27 to 30, talking to the Prophet in 28, verse 28, in particular 18:28, keep thyself with those who call on their Lord morning and evening, desiring His goodwill. And let not thine eyes pass from them, desiring the beauties of this life world, and follow not him whose heart we have made unmindful of our remembrance. Salah is for the remembrance of Allah. So follow not him whose hearts we have made unmindful of our remembrance, and follows his low desires, and his case exceeds all due bounds. So just before I close, I want to show you read into the record here a few of the attributes of the Quran, so that we can know that we don't have to go outside of the Quran to find any details, any explanation, any tafsir for anything. And we see, I'll just quote them off real quickly, that the Quran calls itself Furqan. It distinguishes. In chapter 44, verse 4, Furqan. Therein is distinguished in this Quran, made clear every affair full of wisdom. It's the law of an affair? Yeah, well, it's distinguished and made clear in this Quran. Nothing neglected, meaning everything contained in the Quran. In chapter 6, verse 38, we have not neglected, omitted anything in the book. Everything is contained in this Quran. It's fully detailed in chapter 12, verse 1 and 11. And a distinct detailing of all things. Kulli shay. All things are detailed. Where the details for Salah? Lost it in the book. Everything made clear. Bayan, kulli shay. And we have revealed the book to thee, making clear all things. So everything is clear. So, well, that's not quite clear. We need to know it's clear. Best interpretation, best tafsir, explanation.
You gave that verse for clear old thing?
1689. Sorry.
Okay.
And the best tafsir, so we don't need tafsir Ibn Kathir or Ibn anybody. In 2533. And they cannot bring thee a question, but we have brought thee the truth and the Ahsanul tafsir, the best explanation. Every description, mathal, made clear. And certainly we have explained in a variety of forms, sarafna, tasrif, for men in this Quran, every kind of description, but most men consent to naught but deny. God does not forget. So he said, well, you know, maybe he forgot and overlooked to give the details. 1964, and that Lord is never forgetful, not ever. And the Quran is easy for remembrance. Oh, brother, you know, you got to have this and know this and all that. And certainly we have made the Quran easy for remembrance. But is there any one of you who will mind? Anyone? Not just the top notch, the elite among you, anyone. We made it easy. Why do you suppose the Quran is fully detailed? Why do you suppose it's clear? Why do you suppose it's plain? Why do you suppose it contains everything? A lot of answers. In the Quran, chapter 6, verse 54 to 55. And when those who believe in our message come to thee, say, peace be upon you. Salamun Alaykum. Not Salamun Alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Say, peace be upon you. Those people who trust with this message. Not just anybody. Because Moses told Pharaoh, peace is only on those who follow Al-Huda. If you don't follow Al-Huda, there's no security, there's no safety for you. But we just say it to you anyway. That's a general, that's what we offer. But it's only be effective if you follow Al-Huda. You know, I said to you peace, but it's only going to be peace if you follow Al-Huda. You see? Now, and thus do we make detail distinct. In the Quran, chapter 6, verse 55. And thus do we make detail distinct the messages so that the way of the guilty may be clear. We do it so that the way of the guilty may be clear. Now we can see who is not following the guidance. Because if you're not getting what you're saying from the Quran, your thing is the law of being. You're straight clearly. We say, oh, brother, where'd you get that from? Well, from the Hadith, from the Tafsir, from the Fiqh, from the Hidayah books. You're clearly in error. Your error is clear. We don't have to need magnifying glass or anything to see that. We make this message detailed so that the way of the guilty becomes clear. Now, you see?
Once they say and, it's clear.
Yeah, once you say and, you're the law. Conclusion. Having presented the above Quranic proof text relating to the attributes of the Quran and the qualities of the Quran, I would ask, as Allah himself have asked, quote, in chapter 10, verse 18, would you inform him, meaning Allah, of that which he knows not in the heavens and the earth, about an outward saying? You want to tell Allah what he don't know? Would you inform him? Allah says, what hadith do you want after Allah in his eyes?
Hamza, does it come to mind that the two verses where Allah uses him and the Quran as the same attribute?
Yeah.
You know what that is offhand?
1587 and places of that nature. I'll show you.
Yeah.
1587, let's see.
What was that question?
The only thing that has an attribute of Allah, the only thing that has the same attribute of Allah is His Word.
Quran. It was Quran a theme. Because we saw other thing.
Nothing has an attribute of Allah except His word.
I couldn't. No, I remember one, but I couldn't. Is it 66 something?
Let's see if I can see it here. Is it 1827? I don't know.
I know it was Eladim. Eladim was the word itself.
Is it 6933?
Let me look at it.
6933?
What is this you talking about?
What has the same attribute that Allah
Yeah, it
has?
says Allah. That may be the word there. Eladim, right? Eladim.
Yeah.
Then that's the
69,
Eladim.
33.
Yeah. 69, 33, and
No, let's see.
Surely
is
you
it
believe
Eladim?
not in Allah the
No.
Great.
No,
That's
that's
6933. What are you talking? 5923. That's a security piece.
no, look
That's
for the
it.
word Eladim.
Aladdin.
I'll get it in a second. I need one verse. He said 1587. So I can get
1587.
I can get it from there. I think.
1587. Al-Adim. And this is the one word that has the same attributes as Allah.
Mm-hmm.
1587. Al-Adim. That's what I just read to you.
That's in where?
Al-Adim means the great, right?
Mm-hmm.
What verse is
No,
it?
1587. That's the oft-repeated verse.
No. We're talking about where's a verse that has the same
Allah's
attribute
Right.
as the Quran. The Quran is called Azim.
18.
What's in 1827?
1827. I think that's what it was. Yeah, 1827. You gave that one. You said 1827.
Recite what has been revealed to thee of the book, and thy law, and none can change his words.
No, that's not it.
1820. I just was reading something. You just gave us a verse. It said the great.
No, that's what it is. It's 1587, and then 6933 because 1587 Allah calls the Quran Eladim right there, right?
Yeah, in 1587.
Because the Quran, so then 6933 should be the same thing because that's why he calls himself the great. In that ayah, Hamza, that was it, right?
Let's see. Did we read it?
Yeah, 6933. I think he just refers to himself there as Eladim.
Let me see.
It says, "Sure there be not
Yeah,
Allah
right,
the great."
right.
Those are the two ayahs.
Yeah,
Right, there
right.
we go.
Yeah. 6933. Surely he believed not in Allah al-Azim.
Right.
And then he says in the about the Quran, and certainly we have given you 7 from the oft-repeated and the Grand Quran, al-Azim.
Eladim.
Yeah. So the Quran has the same attribute as Allah. Because it's his word.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Al-Alim.
Yeah. Azim.
That's conclusive.
Al-Alim.
That's conclusive.
Yeah.
It's crazy
Allah
because
be.
my book says this was he that would not believe in Allah Most High.
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
And it was 69 what you said?
33.
Yeah.
33.
They translated it as supreme.
There's more ayahs that have the Eladim there as
Supreme.
well, but that
Yeah. Supreme.
has the Quran, you know.
This is something I never got.
Interesting.
So that's the story.
Should I stop? Or
Yeah. Yeah. We
Okay.
can stop here.
well, actually, I do want to thank you for going over. That was really wonderful.